Hey guys, I'm going to go through this as quick as possible. Okay, so the gist of today is it is a lesson over World War One, but we are also talking about the First Amendment. Now, for your bell ringer, I asked you guys about freedom of speech and get that discussion going. So, like, why is freedom of speech important? Okay, well, first off, what is freedom of speech? Okay, so freedom of speech is the ability to express yourself or share your opinions without government control or interference. Okay, the government cannot control, for the most part, what you say. Okay, and your opinions, right? You're entitled to have your opinions and speak those opinions. Now, why is freedom of speech so important in democracy? Well, it's pretty simple. Okay, a democracy means that the source of our government's power comes from who? Democracy, the source of the government's power is the people. Now, freedom of speech enables people to share their opinions on things and be active participants in the government. If you can protest and all those things. And you got to think way back to the beginning of the year when we talked about the Declaration of Independence. Governments are created to protect our rights, correct? Well, think to yourself, if the government fails its purpose in protecting our rights according to the Declaration of Independence, what do people have the right to do? And that's right. People have a right to change their government. Okay. But how are the people going to know that it's time for change if there's no freedom of speech? If there's no ability to criticize the government or let politicians know that what they're doing is not in the people's best interest. You have to have that freedom of speech so that people can speak out against the government if so needed. Now, I like this little picture, and this is the second part of your bell ringer because it asks you about like when are some times when free speech may be limited. And I like this picture because it's like this little parrot. Free speech doesn't mean careless talk, because you hear it all the time. People think freedom of speech is just a blank check, so to speak, and that people can say whatever they want to at any given time. And that is not true. Okay, free speech, the freedom of speech just eliminates the threat of the government punishing you just for an opinion of yours that you may be critical of the government, something like that. Okay, but there can still be consequences for your actions. We're gonna get that in a second. So, when can the government limit your actions? Because there are some times. The government can limit your speech if it is dangerous or it causes harm to other people. Okay, that's when the government can limit it. But let's say the government, it's a situation where the government does not have the right to limit your speech. Could your speech, your words, or your actions still have negative consequences? Absolutely. Let's say 5 years from now you're working wherever, you're not happy with your job, and you decide to take to Facebook and post about how your boss is a jerk and all this stuff, and naturally he or she fires you. Well, you can't claim that your First Amendment right of freedom of speech has been violated, because is it the government punishing you in that case? No. Okay, it's your employer. Okay, so the freedom of speech just means the government cannot punish you for speaking out against the government. However, during World War One, it was like a night and day difference. It was a different world. Freedom of speech as we know it was not reality during the time of World War One. Okay, because Congress passed these acts, the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act. Okay, the Espionage Act made it illegal to obstruct the draft process in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Okay, which obstruct means like get in the way of, all that. That's what that word means. So the Espionage Act made it illegal to interfere in any operation of the United States military. Now, the other act that Congress passed during this time was the Sedition Act. And the Sedition Act made it illegal for the force Americans to criticize the government, the Constitution, or the military. Now, why would Congress pass this particular act during a war? Just think about that for a second. Why would they pass an act banning any criticism of the government during wartime? The reason why they did this is because they wanted there to be national unity. Okay, you have one side in a war that's united. Okay, they're all on the same page versus another side that maybe there's a lot of internal divisions or conflicts going on within that country. Right, they're not on the same page. Nobody really knows what the plan is. None of that stuff. What side is going to win? It's going to be this one. it's going to be the side that was on the same page. So Congress and Woodrow Wilson here are like, we need everybody to be all in this together. I know, like High School Musical. We need to all be in this together, okay? So we don't need any dissenters in the ranks. We don't need anybody speaking out, criticizing the government. That is not what the United States needs during wartime. Okay, our enemy is not with each other. Our enemy is across the sea. Okay, and so the Sedition Act made it illegal to speak out against the government because the government wanted everybody to be on the same page, everybody to be united. Now, so the United States goes to war. Obviously, Woodrow Wilson. Which recall real quick. Why did Woodrow Wilson want us neutral initially? A lot of immigrants, and he was all these people were from the nations at war. He did not want to get us involved. Now, what is the relationship between the 19th Amendment? Because when we study U.S. history, it's so easy to get caught up in our little units, and view them as separate topics that are not connected. Okay. But there are still these things going on. Like we talked about the progressive movement, a few weeks ago, and we talked about women's suffrage. Well, around the same decade that World War I is about to break out, the suffragist movement is also happening in the United States. So how is World War I going to impact the path for the 19th Amendment, the fight for the 19th Amendment? Well, think about it. And this shows you right here, okay, what these women were doing. They were known as the Silent Sentinels, and they protested outside the White House. Look, Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty? Mr. President, what will you do for women's suffrage? So they're putting this back on Wilson, okay? Now, the United States is at war, okay? And here they are criticizing the president. They're speaking out against the president, a wartime president. And you got to think, what does the Sedition Act say? Is this legal? And it's not. During this time, which the Sedition Act does not exist today, but during this time, it was illegal to criticize the government in any way, form, or fashion. Okay. Now, so these women are arrested. Now, the war, ironically, so this was a bad thing, but it actually helped the path for women's suffragists because they went into jail. Okay. We're supposedly fighting this war for democracy, but these women are getting protested or arrested for protesting to get the right to vote. And it's like, okay, we're supposedly fighting this war against places that deny democracy to people, but we're not giving it to our own here at home. Okay. Like half our population does not even have a constitutional right to vote. And so these women get arrested and they get sent to the jail. And then what they endure in the jails is actually what really, really emphasizes the need for women's rights because it shows what these women are willing to go through for equal rights in regards to voting. Because these women, led by Alice Paul, many of them, after they get arrested, they go on hunger strikes, which, this is a tactic employed by several throughout history. It was very popular for Gandhi. I forget how many days exactly he went on a hunger strike, but it was something. The longevity of it was insane. But anyway, they go on a hunger strike, and obviously the people who run the prisons do not want these women to, die. But they end their strike prematurely by force feeding them, tying them down, and force feeding them raw eggs. Now, on this next slide is a trailer of a movie called Iron Jawed Angels. And y'all are going to watch this after this lecture video is done. And at the end of that video, they show them force feeding her. And now that you know the context of it, you will better understand just exactly what is going on in this. Now, oh, and by the way, if you like Grey's Anatomy, what's his name? Derek is on this movie. Yada, yada, yada. I don't know. My girlfriend's obsessed with that movie. Well, let me see if I can click ahead. All right, so y'all watch that. Now, this play, okay, we're going to do the play at the beginning of class on Thursday because I don't want you guys to miss out on that. It will be a nice little review of World War I because it reviews some of the background on what led us to go to war with Germany. But not only that, it also gives you a little bit more background about Charles Schenck, okay, and why he was arrested. And I actually wrote it myself. But it's called "I Got Arrested for My Free Speech," and that's what this case, which is pronounced Schenck, okay, Charles Schenck. That's what this case is all about. Is okay. It was a free speech case during World War I. So what happened? Well, the big significance of this, first of all, let's get this terminology. This is the next thing in your notes. Clear and present danger. What does it mean? Okay. If something causes a clear and present danger, the Supreme Court made this ruling in Schenck versus United States. And clear and present danger means when one's words causes a clear and present danger or harm to others in society. And the analogy that the Supreme Court used when they handed down the ruling in this case was shouting, "Fire!" in a crowded theater. So think about it. Let's think about that analogy for a second. If somebody just randomly, everybody's sitting down in a movie theater and somebody yells fire, what reactions is that going to, lead to? Well, it's going to be chaotic. Everybody's going to be running out, and people are probably going to get trampled or hurt in that process. Okay, so what the clear and present danger means is that if your words lead to something that would harm other people immediately, it is not allowed. Okay, now, but what did Charles Schenck do that was so terrible, or what did he say or do that was so terrible that the Supreme Court um, linked him to this and causing danger or harm to others? Well, let's get the background. So the United States was obviously fighting in World War I when this case happened. Okay. And the United States had a new draft requiring all males ages 21 to 30 to enter. I know in your notes it says 18 to 27. The age requirements were different at various times during the war. They're not significant. All you need to know is that there was a draft. The United States was fighting World War I. Congress passes the Selective Service Act, and now men are being drafted and sent off to war. Okay. Now, to encourage national unity, to get the country together on the same page, we've talked about this, Congress passed the Espionage Act. And what this did is it set very, very significant penalties if somebody was saying or passing around false statements that would interfere with the war. Okay. And so this is a very, very significant act that was passed through Congress. Okay. I mean, it's a law, and in this case, it's illegal to interfere with the draft or a military operation, and that's exactly what Charles Schenck did. So Charles Schenck gets arrested for violating the Espionage Act because he's mailing all these letters to people who had just been drafted, telling them not to go to war. I mean, it's in black and white, pretty much as clear as black and white can be. He is not allowed to do this, right? According to the law, and its Espionage Act is still a law today. You cannot interfere with the military or the draft or any way, shape, or form. But in this case, he was arrested because he was mailing all these letters, these pamphlets to people who had just been drafted, telling them not to go to war. And so, what is Charles Schenck going to say here? After he's arrested, I mean, he was just expressing his opinion about the war. He was just passing out pamphlets. He's going to say, "Gosh darn it, my First Amendment right has been violated." And that is the argument that eventually landed before the Supreme Court. Now, what is the Supreme Court going to rule in this case? I mean, it's the United States of America, right? Freedom of speech. Yeah, boy. However, the Supreme Court in this case actually ruled 9-0 against Schenck. It was unanimous. Okay. And you have to think about this. Like, there was not one justice that agreed with Schenck in his free speech claim. They said his free speech had not been violated in this case because what he was doing would cause a clear and present danger or harm to the country's security. Now, think about it like this. How would mailing letters to people who had just been drafted telling them not to go to war, how could that potentially harm national security by telling them not to go to war? Well, think about it. If Schenck had been successful in his efforts, then the draft numbers would have been way down. The number of people engaged in the military would have dropped. And then the United States would not have had the numbers to fight in World War I against Germany. Okay, so that they're saying that because he interfered with the draft, he could potentially have caused a bigger issue, right? When you don't have enough soldiers, that's a major problem. So what he did caused a clear and present danger or harm to the country's security. So the significance of Schenck versus United States is this case established the clear and present danger test, okay? Which what the clear and present danger test states is this. When your words cause a clear and present danger or harm to others or society, the speaker can be punished. You can be punished for that. Now, it's important to note the Supreme Court has made slight alterations to the ruling in Schenck versus United States in recent years. Now it's like if your words promote imminent lawless action, which what that basically means is that if what you are saying encourages people to immediately break the law, it can't be limited. Okay. But the general principle of this still stands. Okay. This case showed that freedom of speech is not absolute. Okay. There are some limits to what you can say and what you can do. Okay. Now, sorry, I got distracted for a sec. So the clear and present danger test. Okay. Why is this significant? The government constantly has to have this balance act right here because obviously we have individual rights, okay, like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press. Okay, the clear and present danger test helps keeps these in check because obviously we want freedom of speech and personal privacy, but is it worth giving unlimited freedom of speech to somebody if what they are doing is going to harm national security and harm others? Is it worth giving that amount of free speech to one person if what they're doing is potentially going to harm others in the country overall? And the answer is no. Okay. So it helps to be where it's like, okay, we want individuals to have their rights, but if what they do endangers all of society or harms all of society, the Supreme Court does have a right to limit. The government does have a justification to limit that speech. All right, that's it. What you need to do the rest of class. Okay, so you did the bell ringer before this video. You are going to do an exit slip. Okay, it is. I want you to try and do it without notes. Okay, and I'm just grading you based on whether or not you do it. Okay, but please try your best on that. And then you will have PLT. You will watch. Excuse me. Before the exit slip, you will also watch. You will watch the video over Iron John Angels. It's like 2 minutes, and then you'll be done. You do the exit slip, and then it's PLT time. I'm giving you guys a good deal amount of PLT time to work on your project, get that done. I know a lot of you guys are to that finish line. Okay, so work on that, get it done. If you need to stay after school, you can do so tomorrow, and I will still accept your project for full credit if you do that. Okay, so tomorrow or Wednesday, I will be here after school. Okay, but obviously try your best. Don't bank on that because what about if something comes up tomorrow and you can't stay, then your project's late. But try to get it in before tomorrow, or excuse me, tonight at midnight. Okay. But if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Whenever I return on Thursday, we have a big day planned. We have just a few notes, but then we have a gallery walk, which we're going to go over to the gym and look at World War I propaganda. I think you guys will really like that. And then the last thing we will do, or excuse me, the first thing we will do, the other thing we will do at the beginning of class is we will play out the play of Schenck versus United States as a form of review. Should be a great day. Make sure on that note, make sure you guys fill out that Google form, signing up for the parts. Okay, what you would like to do, and then I will use a random number generator to determine which person gets which part. All right. Well, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Let me know if you need absolutely anything.